Hey BookTube, Chelsea the Reading Outlaw here to wrap up books 6 through 10 that I have read in 2017. This one is much more of a grab bag than the last one was. Adult, nonfiction, young adult, middle grade. We got a little bit of everything. So to start at number 6, When the Sea Turned to Silver by Grace Lin. This is a sequel to Where the Mountains Meet the Moon, which I talked about in my 1 through 5 wrap up. It's also the third and final book in the kind of trilogy of books that Grace Lin wrote. These are middle grade Chinese folktale based adventure stories featuring various female protagonists. This story is about Pinmei, and Pinmei's grandmother is the storyteller, capital S. And she's captured by an evil emperor who is building a great wall to help him keep evil spirits out of his kingdom. And so Pinmei has to go on an adventure to rescue her grandmother, and along the way she learns stories of Chinese culture and Chinese history and folklore. It's very much so like Where the Mountains Meet the Moon. I actually didn't like it quite as much Where the Mountains Meet the Moon in retrospect, kind of looking back on both. I just felt like Where the Mountains Meet the Moon was a better blend of things, but When the Sea Turned to Silver, I think really wrapped up this series nicely. So I'm glad that I read it. I don't necessarily think that it's like the best middle grade trilogy that I ever read, but I do think that if you're looking for Chinese folklore in your adventure stories or as the background to the middle grade that you're reading, this is definitely one to pick up. Book number 7 is Burn Baby Burn by Meg Medina. This is a young adult book that I saw on several people's best of lists for 2016. So it's definitely been multi-rect to me, so I can kind of assure you of that. This is the story of Nora Lopez. Nora Lopez is graduating high school and deciding what she wants to do with the rest of her life in New York City in the 70s during the Summer of Sam serial killings. So there is somebody kind of wandering around the various neighborhoods in New York, and in her neighborhood specifically, looking for people who very much so resemble Nora and killing them and murdering them senselessly. So that's really terrifying. And so Nora is living in a place of fear because of that. But she's also living in a place of fear because she's trying to decide what she wants to do with her life. She's having a lot of struggles at home. Her brother Hector is one of my favorite characters in this book, and he is legitimately a sociopath. Like, no joke, he is a pyromaniac, and there are a couple times he, like, threatens to murder Nora, and it's just very stressful. So she's kind of counterbalancing these two fears that she has, one of which is very large and very kind of theoretical, and one of which is very practical and very much so affecting her day to day. And Meg Medina just does such a fabulous job handling that while also discussing like racial politics and class politics in New York in the 70s for this girl who doesn't really want to go to college and is probably going to end up going to trade school to be a carpenter. And her friends who are white are getting ready to go to college, and there's a lot of interplay and kind of social dynamics. And one of my favorite characters in the book is a side character who lives in Nora's apartment building, and she is a Black feminist in the 70s in New York, and she's very much so all about the intersectionality of things, and she's literally the character who's always there talking about how race and gender and class all intersect together. So there are times that it might come across as a little kind of pedantic to have her in there, but her character is captured so well that I just loved her so much it didn't even faze me. Number 8 is a nonfiction book. I listened to this book on audio in a day, and I think I'm actually going to go back and probably re-listen to it one more time because I still have the checkout from Overdrive, and it's a book that's really worth listening to or reading more than once. It's not super long, but it's super important, and that's They Can't Kill Us All, Ferguson, Baltimore, and a New Era in America's Racial Justice Movement by Wesley Lowery. This book is a book that Wesley Lowery put together over the course of reporting for the Washington Post on the deaths of Eric Garner, John Crawford, Tamir Rice, Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, and Sandra Bland. Each person is mentioned in the book. Each case is explained in the book. And while doing that and explaining about his experience in Ferguson, Missouri, and in Baltimore, Maryland, and watching the Black Lives Movement come to be, he gets into discussion of the militarization of police in America, the radicalization of racial politics, and the kind of new era of social activists. He speaks very much so of this kind of class of Black activists who have been raised by parents and grandparents who experienced the civil rights movement, and so have experienced kind of this shift from non-violent protest towards more active and aggressive forms of protest. and how that all manages to function in America, where we have such a highly militarized police state and are so quick as a public to make assumptions and perceptions about race and class when it comes to interactions between Black bodies and the police. This book is very much so Wesley Lowery's kind of personal journey. He's a reporter, so he does a really great job kind of introducing the facts of each case and explaining each case and how he got involved kind of on the street and with various citizen reporters who were at the events as they were happening. But then in addition to that, he also very much so talks about his personal development as an African-American reporter and a biracial reporter who is light-skinned in these communities, and how his own race and racial politics play into his ability to be a reporter, to be an objective observer. At one point in time, he's arrested. That's actually how the book opens, is with his arrest. So he has kind of a personal interaction with the police while reporting on police brutality. And it's just really, really fascinating. It's incredibly sad. He speaks with several community members and family members of these now famous slain African Americans who were killed by police, several of them unarmed, some of them armed. Wesley Lowery kind of gets into the fact that some of the context isn't necessarily pertinent. Some of it might be, but not all of it is. It's just very much so layers upon layers of complex issues to kind of unpack from one another while also speaking to grieving family members. And it was really hard to listen to, but Wesley Lowery does a really, really great job with his reporting. And he just, I feel like, really kind of encapsulates this very tense and fraught moment in American racial politics that's still continuing to happen. The Chicago Police Department was just investigated by the Justice Department, and that report was just filed, and it found massive amounts of undertraining, understaffing, underreporting, a policy of silence, police brutality, unnecessary gun firings, and all of these things. So this is very much so an issue that is continuing to develop in America, and one that we as a society, and especially we as white bodies, will need to continue to pay attention to and call attention to whenever we can, especially as we go into 2017 and the 4 years beyond that. Number 9 was very much so a relief to read after reading They Can't Kill Us All, and that is Uncanny number 14, which is the January-February issue for 2017. I love Uncanny magazine. This unicorn kills fascists. It was very much so a relief to go from the hard-hitting nonfiction to fiction with teeth, fiction that is fighting back, that is addressing gender and race and sexuality in a way that is proactive and positive, and I just really love Uncanny magazine. This one really, really knocked it out of the park, and I don't know if that's because it was any better than any of the others, because Uncanny is always amazing, or just because I really needed Uncanny magazine this month to speak to me in a way, and so I just was like, give it to me. But it was really amazing. Some of my favorites that I will link to down below if I can are Monster Girls Don't Cry by A. Merck Rusted, Some Cupids Kill with Arrows by Tansy Rayner Roberts, and In Lieu of the Stories My Santera Abuela Should Have Told Me Herself This Poem by Carlos Hernandez. So I just really, really loved Uncanny. It got 4 stars for me this month as a magazine, which is a really, really high rating for a short story collection magazine type thing to get from me. I just really loved it. I really needed it. A+ Uncanny. And then the last thing I read was a really kind of interesting piece of media. It was a mixed graphic print text essay collection kind of thing called The Secret Loves of Geek Girls. It's edited by Hope Nicholson, but it has contributions from Margaret Atwood and Marjorie Liu and Mariko Tamaki and all of these different graphic novel illustrators and artists who are female whose names you will recognize if you're like into reading comics. So I really love this collection. This is very much so literally just about like the dating and love life of geek girls, and it covers everything from internet dating and creating your internet profile to how to get divorced when you're a geek girl and how that works for you, to the different forms of sexuality and gender identity that people can kind of work through as they are also working through geek culture. And not everything in this collection worked for me. Some of it was less kind of relevant to my life than other parts were, but everything was done really well. The level of craft in the book was really high. I really appreciated the way that the graphics and the stories were all interspersed together. So I feel like Hope Nicholson did a really great job on the editing end. And I just really enjoyed it. It was not like knock it out of the park amazing, but it was a very enjoyable kind of last book for this round of books to read. So yeah, that's books 6 through 10. That's the next 5 books that I've read this month. The next video of these that I do will probably be covering all the fan fiction that I've read so far this month. I think I'm going to try to do monthly to bi-monthly updates on that. So look out for that. Of course, it's like the second week in January, so I'm already off schedule. So we missed Short Story Saturday. So I think I'm just going to go back to alternating Saturdays, just to give myself the freedom to do more if I want, but not to have to. So Short Story Saturday will be coming up soon. We will be talking about a couple of the things in Anne Kinney magazine a little bit more in depth, and also The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. So that is happening. It is coming. Otherwise, let me know down below what you've been reading. If you've read any of these, if you think you're gonna read any of these, please feel free, like, comment, subscribe, or hit me up on social media, because I'm always here to talk books with you lovely people. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Have happy reading.